In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Dear family, if only we were monks. Remember I told you St. Gregory the Great just lamented that he had all these duties and he couldn't be a pastor to his people because he was Pope and the administration was very taxing. If only we were monks and we could just regularly gather in the chapel for prayer, for the holy sacrifice of the Mass daily, we'd have the privilege of these past 7 or 8 days of commemorating such luminaries of the Catholic Church as St. Timothy, the Timothy who accompanied Paul, the Timothy, and I just learned this myself today, who was the first bishop of Ephesus. Isn't that one of the places Paul visited? Or wasn't St. John the Beloved, wasn't he stuck in Ephesus for a while? I think he was. Patmos, he was stuck on Patmos, but I think he was in Ephesus as well. Which actually makes sense when we consider today's saint. We also had in the past 7, 8 days conversion of St. Paul, St. John Chrysostom, doctor of the church, St. Francis de Sales, doctor of the church. Remember, he's the one that said, that beautiful passage is about this long, about the cross that God asks each one of us to carry and how he weighs it, measures it, checks it twice, kisses it before he gives it to us. It's a profound passage. I should say it in here sometime. Profound. And St. John Bosco, such an incredible saint. How great would be our Catholic foundation of faith if we could study and meditate upon these greats in the midst of the real presence, receiving the real presence during the holy sacrifice of the Mass every day. Some places there is, well, it's a Novus Ordo, so you know what I think about that, but people could go. But if you're only supposed to have a 7-minute homily, if that's what the seminary formator said, and Jorge Bergoglio said too, don't make it more than 7 minutes. God forbid we teach you the Catholic faith. I wish we could. Well, thankfully today we venerate the great St. Ignatius of Antioch, also known as Theophorus. He's born in Syria, circa the year 50, and he suffered martyrdom. There's a range here from 98 to 117 AD. I don't understand that because we're pretty accurate about so many others, but somewhere in there. More than one of the earliest ecclesiastical writers have given credence to the legend that Ignatius was the child whom the Savior took up in his arms as described in Mark. Remember he said, he brought a child. Who's greatest? He brought a child into their midst. It's also believed, and with great probability, that with his friend St. Polycarp, remember he was burned at the stake, and the flames wouldn't touch him, but he came just this beautiful, luminescent golden brown, and they finally had to kill him with a spear, and the blood put out the fire. It goes, by the way, St. John the Beloved, to St. Ignatius of Antioch, to St. Polycarp. These are fathers of our faith who taught the real faith. Anyway, he was one of the auditors of the Apostle St. John. And if we include St. Peter, Ignatius was the 3rd bishop of Antioch. So I guess I learned something new there too. I didn't realize that St. Peter was a bishop of Antioch. He was Pope. And he was the immediate successor of Eusebius. These names, these great names from our history. Theodoret, and then he gives a long quotation here, is the authority for the statement that St. Peter himself appointed Ignatius to the see of Antioch. And St. John Chrysostom lays special emphasis on the honor conferred upon the martyr in receiving his episcopal consecration at the hands of the apostles themselves. Well, as you know, St. Ignatius of Antioch was sentenced to death, but it appears that instead of being executed in Antioch, as is normal, he was taken to Rome to be made, by some accounts, a greater example to all of the Christians of their potential fate if they didn't worship and honor the emperor. And while en route to Rome, where he met his martyrdom, he was fed to the lions. He wrote a series of letters I don't know if you've ever read any of them, but just... And you could read those 7 letters. You could read that whole thick catechism. The epistle to the Ephesians, to the Magnesians, to the Trallians, to the Romans, to the Philadelphians, to the Smyrnians, and an epistle to Polycarp, who was bishop of Smyrna. On the way, he actually stopped in Smyrna. He chatted with St. Polycarp. And this correspondence forms a central part of a later collection of works by the Apostolic Fathers. He's considered one of the 3 most important of these. After the apostles, you have the Apostolic Fathers, Clement of Rome, Polycarp, and him. His letters also serve as an example of early Christian theology and address important topics, including ecclesiology, the sacraments, and the role of bishops. And quoting from newadvent.org, we have this conclusion. It is scarcely possible to exaggerate the importance of the testimony which the Ignatian letters offer to the dogmatic character of apostolic Christianity. The martyred bishop of Antioch constitutes a most important link between the apostles and the fathers of the church, receiving from the apostles themselves, whose auditor he was, not only the substance of revelation, but also their own inspired interpretation of it. Dwelling, as it were, at the very fountainhead of gospel truth, his testimony must necessarily carry with it the greatest weight and demand the most serious consideration. Cardinal Newman did not exaggerate the matter when he said that the whole system of Catholic doctrine may be discovered, at least in outline, not to say in parts, filled up in the course of his 7 epistles. See, so you should read them. They're not that long. It's not, I don't think they're as long as one of my homilies. Among the many Catholic doctrines to be found in the letters are the following. Now, this is just 7 letters, and he puts this all together. The church was divinely established as a visible society. The salvation of souls is its end. Those who separate themselves from it are cut off themselves from God. The hierarchy of the church was instituted by Christ. The threefold character of the hierarchy, so you have priest, bishop, pope. The order of the episcopacy is superior by divine authority to that of the priesthood. The unity of the church, the holiness of the church, the Catholicity of the church. I think he's the first one that said the word Catholic. The infallibility of the church, the doctrine of the Eucharist, which word we find for the first time applied to the Blessed Sacrament. Just as in Smyrnians 8, we meet for the first time the phrase Catholic Church used to designate all Christians. The Incarnation, the supernatural virtue of virginity, already much esteemed and made the subject of a vow. The religious character of matrimony, the value of united prayer, the primacy of the See of Rome. That's a lot. And just these 7 little letters. I don't know, have you ever heard of them before today? They're just 7 little letters. Have all that in them. From somebody who learned it from the apostles themselves, who learned it from none other than Jesus. See, that's the kind of stuff that counts, not Bergoglio's personal opinion. He, moreover, denounces in principle the Protestant doctrine of private judgment in matters of religion. The heresy against which he chiefly inveighs is Docetism, and neither do the Judaizing heresies escape his vigorous condemnation. That's all quote from the newadvent.org. It's a good site. That is quite a listed dogma which he received directly from the apostles. But perhaps his most renowned quote. Does anybody know a quote? There's one famous quote. St. Ignatius of Antioch. You know, it's the. There it is. There it is. I am the wheat of Christ. May I be ground by the teeth of beasts that I may be found pure bread. He wrote that to the Romans when he was telling them, listen, he wrote ahead of time to the Romans. I don't know how the letter got there faster than he did, but there were sojourns along the route of his trip to Rome to be fed to the beasts. But he urged the Romans not to interfere with his martyrdom because it was a gift from God. So put all this together, dear family. You find in St. Ignatius of Antioch a real Catholic bishop. That's the model. That's what they're supposed to look like. But compare that to what we have today, which you know I will, as a counterpoint to the greatness of St. Ignatius. He's after St. Ignatius of Loyola, right? Yeah. Well, where did he get his name, Ignatius of Loyola? Ignatius of Antioch. As a counterpoint to the greatness of St. Ignatius, look at the USCCB with Jorge Bergoglio sticking his nose in where it doesn't belong on the issue of illegal evasion across the nation's border. Something no other nation on earth would allow, including Bergoglio himself, who, as you know, in the last couple weeks, maybe it was only a week ago, he spoke on the consequences of trying to illegally immigrate into Vatican City and its 30-foot high wall. Good. Yeah, that's not good for Bergoglio. It's okay for us, according to Bergoglio. So just briefly, and it is brief, look at the USCCB and their false new definition of charity. Charity which begins and ends with salvation of the souls, not just putting bread on the table or helping someone commit a crime, aid and abet someone to commit a crime. Look at their false definition of charity, whilst they conveniently and completely keep out of the discussion the $2.4 billion with a B dollars they have received from the government under the fraud of a Catholic, Joe Biden. So much was given to fraudulently named Catholic charities, you'll see why I say that in a moment, under the guise of helping immigrants, conveniently ignoring that they are illegal criminals, and conveniently leaving out what the brilliant Michael Hitchborn of the Lepanto Institute. If you haven't heard of it, go to the Lepanto Institute. This man is brilliant. He's a researcher par excellence, just incredible. I don't know how he finds time to do it, because he's got a family of 7 or 8 kids himself. Anyway, listen to what the brilliant Michael Hitchborn of the Lepanto Institute called the grotesque salaries taken by Catholic charities CEOs. I said it before, if you want to know real truth about what is going on with the USCCB, the cardinals, the bishops of the United States, just read Hitchborn's postings on the Lepanto Institute or the brilliant Complicit Clergy website, which really hammers them and has hammered them for some time. Vicky Yamasaki's CUP website, CUP, which stands for Catholics United for Peace, and of course a great John Henry Weston. Can't say enough about him and the incredible LifeSite News website. I think I've told you before, I told John Henry right to his face, because we're friends. So I can't even read your website sometimes because it just makes me mad. I get too upset. But that's because he's actually speaking the truth of the evil, of the corruption. Well, listen now to Michael Hitchborn of the Lepanto Institute reveal the filthy corruption of Catholic charities, and then do not give them one more penny, period. Not one more penny. Here's some examples. Here's just some. The Catholic Charities of Baltimore has as its senior employee William J. McCarthy Jr., whose salary and benefits total $510,904. That's a charitable organization that we give money to. It has a total revenue of $127.6 million, 52% from government grants. That's your money. That's your taxpayer money. We don't give our money in taxes. They don't take it from us in taxes so that they can define who it's going to go to and then choose their particularly favorable NGOs to do it. No, that's not charity. Charity is when we give our money, not when the government takes it from us. 52% of that $127.6 million were from government grants. And of that $127.6 million, $92.9 million paid salaries and compensation. That's 73%. That's not charity. There's no charity there. That only leaves 27% that might be used for charity. God knows what. It just leaves you speechless. The senior employee for Catholic Charities in New Hampshire is Thomas E. Blonsky, and his salary and benefits totaled $336,785. From its total revenue of $92.9 million, government grants included, 43% or $40.1 million paid salaries and compensation. No, I think that Tunnel for Towers makes a point of pointing out that I think only 5% maybe go for such things as administrative costs, including salaries and benefits. The 95%, if I got this right, goes to the wounded soldiers who need it, the first responders who need it. That's charity. That's a properly run charity, not something where 73% or 43% goes to salaries and compensation. The senior employee of Catholic Charities in Chicago is Sally Blount, and her salary and benefits totaled $264,329. That's a huge salary. Wouldn't you like to have that kind of a salary? Charity. How dare they look themselves in the mirror? Supich, that's his responsibility. Blaze Supich has a total revenue of $174.8 million, 72% from government grants, our tax dollars. 70% from our tax dollars, and 40% or $70.2 million paid salaries and benefits. $70.2 million in Chicago paid salaries and benefits. The senior employee for Catholic Charities of Syracuse is Loria Cardi, and her salary and benefits totaled $233,353. From its total revenue of $70.9 million, 57% came from government grants. $45.1 million paid salaries and benefits, 57% of that. There's just two more. So that you realize this isn't just in a few isolated instances. I can't wait to look at San Diego and McElroy, or D.C. and Gregory, or New York and, what's his name, Dolan. The senior employee for Catholic Charities of Rochester is Karen DeHay, and her salary and benefits totaled, well, I've written this down, it must be $215,141. I have 15,000. We know that isn't true. I was rushing to get over here. From its total revenue of $67.2 million, 79% from government grants, our tax dollars. $49.4 million paid salaries and benefits. That's 74% paid salaries and benefits and had nothing to do with charity. 74%. Senior employee for Catholic Charities of Trenton is Marlene Lau Collins, and her salary and benefits totaled $206,561, and from its total revenue of $56.6 million, 41% for government grants, our tax dollars, $40 million paid salaries and benefits, 71%. Salaries and benefits, 29% charity. Dear family, these are just a few examples of how Catholic Charities around the United States is ripping off the U.S. taxpayers and lining their own pockets. They exist for their own pockets. And when they do help out, so many are helping out not U.S. citizens, oh no, illegal criminals. The light is finally being shown upon these corrupt, filthy bishops. And we're seeing it even in people like J.D. Vance commenting on it, President Trump commenting on it. We're not going to fund these Catholic NGOs anymore. Why? They know this. Of course, the bishops aren't telling us this, are they? Can you imagine if a bishop stood in the pulpit of his cathedral and told the people that 74% of the money that they give to Catholic Charities is paying salaries and benefits to Catholic Charities employees, and only 26% is going to the poor or to the illegals? Can you imagine if he actually said that? Of course they don't. Dolan, what do they do in your diocese, Dolan? The light is being shown. How they misuse taxpayer money and they literally aid and abet criminality. And you know full well, because we discussed the Catechism of the Catholic Church in a recent homily, I think it was just last week, that their actions are contrary to the teaching of the Catholic Church. absolutely contrary to the teaching of the Catholic Church. Contrary to 2,000 years of unchanged and unchangeable truth, dating back to the apostles and Jesus and real bishops and martyrs like St. Ignatius of Antioch. Dear family, once again, the bishops have proven conclusively that they are not to be trusted in anything. Not the faith and not our money. Not morality, not in truth. They are not to be trusted in anything. And they should, all 300 of them, who directly contravened both the Catechism, the Deposit of Faith, and the Constitution of the United States, they should resign and do so in disgrace. Resign in the disgrace that they are, every single one of them. Dear family, do not give them one more penny. These unrepentant vermin are going to go to hell. They're unrepentant. Oh, you would know if they said they're sorry, wouldn't you? They said they're sorry. I'm sorry I spent 74% of your tax dollars on salaries and not helping the poor. I'm sorry we run up a $5 billion plus bill, not counting attorney's fees, for covering up what we covered up. They're unrepentant to this day, and they're leading countless eternal souls to hell with them. But we know better. That's why we don't follow them. We know better because we hold fast to the deposit of faith handed down to us by St. Timothy, St. Paul, St. John Chrysostom, St. Francis de Sales, St. John Bosco, and today's great luminary, St. Ignatius of Antioch, bishop and martyr. In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen.